We let Trustee Lara summarize that. What's the,
it was
since
a
she made
comment
the
made
comment, I don't know
about
what
the
she's
budget
talking about.
deficit, a possible budget deficit related to the National Register. And there's quite a long paragraph talking about how they're unrelated and then the update on the current fiscal year budget.
And we came to the conclusion that that was the one that was the easiest and to identify and to deal with, and so that's the one we selected. And but I don't, that was the one I heard the most comment about in the community.
That was me.
I'm talking about a resident's comment.
I suppose the question that I have is why do we even need this letter at all?
Well, it's because it was suggested, or recommended in a discussion in our last meeting, and so in attempting to bring some solidarity to the board, that's why I took it on with Brad to see if we couldn't come up with something, and that's why I thought it would better fit in the newsletter.
Well, let me answer that, Lisa. I think one of the concerns I have is that I think one of the reasons for the vote being so strong against it, I think some people took offense to the fact that the board seemed to act without waiting for a vote. The idea of why not wait for a vote.
Trustee Hughes, we did not seem, we did.
Let me finish, please.
Okay.
I'm saying, I think that I'll speak for myself. When I voted on this, the reason I went ahead with it, I saw the referendum as being a delaying tactic. Could be wrong. I also could see no reason at all why anyone would object to the National Register. Now, a lot of information came out, and a lot of things were put up about kind of raising taxes and property and affecting property values and the like. And the idea might be that if we voted for that, we were for those things. Well, we're not. And I would just like to defend myself. I think we voted knowing what I think are the true facts on it. I think some of us are saying, maybe we just ought to make that clear. We weren't acting recklessly about that. We went on with the idea that this was in the best interest of the community, and frankly, the objections that were raised just are not true. They're just not true in fact. And frankly, I think the people that raised those know that. I mean, it's not debatable. There are no restrictions with the National Register. These are kind of non-debatable things. I think these things were thrown out. They got people involved and excited. They have every right to say all that. But I feel the need to, at least I would like to make it clear that I felt I was voting with good conscience, because I feel the objections that were made just really didn't stand up to it. In fact, my question is, I think, for people voting against it, I really wonder what their real objective was. Because it wasn't for anything to say, they're just not true in fact. So that's why I felt that we might need some kind of, and maybe it's just a personal thing, to say I want to just get the record straight. And that's why I wanted some kind of a letter. And maybe the best thing to do is for some of us who felt we voted for it, maybe we need to send out our own letter. I don't even know if that's permissible, but that's something some of us might want to consider.
Well, it's freedom of speech. You can send out anything you want, but if it comes to the village, obviously, I tell you what.
And Jim, I understand what you're saying. And again, with the idea of moving forward and not spending the next 2 or 3 months debating what's fact and what's not, what's a real fact and what's a real truth and what's a partial truth. We all just went through a national election, and I'm sure that there's one senator out there that's probably feeling the same way, and I think a lot of us that went through that campaign on either side of the candidates, there was a lot of untruths, mistruths, whatever the truthiest words are, but it's over. It's over. I'm sure that a lot of the candidates thought that a lot of the campaign material was incorrect, and it was, on both sides. I would just like to move on from here. And I mean, if you wanted to set the record straight, I can understand that. I think from a board position, all it does is just keeps the debate going. And it is time for our community to move on, in my opinion.
Maybe that would be the right answer, Trustee Hughes, if you would draft a letter and send it out under your name, and it's that's your prerogative.
And I may do that.
Yeah, that's your choice. So.
On the other hand, the board voted last night to send out a letter to respond to things that were said that were not accurate. So we're not really upholding that vote if we don't follow through with that.
Well, I disagree. I think the letter right here
I'm not
says
finished. I've heard a number of people say, you know, we'd like to move on from this. We've all said that, we'd like to move on from this issue. Yet tonight a resolution came before us, and now it looks like something's coming back to us again next month to continue talking about this. So I question why we're willing to spend time on some aspects of it, but not on others. And I think there are a number of people in the community who feel like a disservice was done to them.
And that will be handled at the next election. I'm sure that they're going to speak again.
Well, much the same way the resolution was killed, I suggest we kill this letter. We're not gonna do the resolution, let's not do the letter, let's truly move on. And if anybody wants to send a personal letter or set the record straight, I think it's all within our rights to do so. That's my recommendation.
Let's have to remember.
Is that a motion?
I guess I can make that into a motion, yes.
And I will second it. I think we just
Second,
move on.
all right. Mr. Talbot?
There were at least 5 glaring inaccuracies that were disseminated the day of the election. One of them has been highlighted, as you indicated, Christie, in this letter that you have before you. Doesn't the board feel as though they owe an explanation of that inaccuracy? It's a fallacy. The board is now being accused of harboring a deficit of over $500,000, and it's being tied to the National Register. And I think the board, not individual members of the board, but the board itself ought to clarify that. I think residents ought to hear from you.
Well, I did.
And you
That's
did.
the letter.
You did, and so I'm speaking in favor of that.
Okay, all right. Well, we have a motion and a second to kill the letter. So, Clerk Hastings, please call the roll.
Trustee Smetana, your motion?
Yes?
Trustee White, your second?
Yes.
Trustee Batu?
No.
Trustee Hughes?
Yes.
Trustee Lair?
No.
Trustee Terrell?
No. I'd like to send out this letter.
So what's the
Vote
vote?
is 3-3.
Vote is 3-3. I vote yes.
I have a question. Are we putting this letter in a newsletter, as you previously said?
Oh, that was a consideration, and I got the sense of the board that they wanted a letter to go out. So we're working on the newsletter right now, so I'll look at including parts of that in there.
Well, is that what your motion was, to kill that letter?
My
Yes.
motion was to kill that letter that goes out to the entire community as a letter.
But to put it in the, to kill
No,
it
it's
as
not
far
what
as
you
going
said.
in the newsletter?
That wasn't part of the
It
motion.
was part of the motion.
I'm still not clear, I'm sorry.
No,
I'm not understanding.
You're the
Were you
only
talking
one.
about an additional letter, or this letter that is in our meeting packets? Because Trustee Lair and Trustee Hughes were talking about an additional letter,
This-
or a letter that.
This was a letter that was going to go out to the community as well as in communication.
And,
And that is what my motion was, is to not send this letter out. We generally don't vote on articles that go into the newsletter.
Okay. The next action item is to
excuse me,
consider.
before we move on
All right.
from this issue though, another vote that we took last month regarding the nomination was to put a link on the history part